Welcome to Old Guy Tech,
the OGT.TV recording studio.
Technology for the rest of us.
Thanks for watching. I'm Rob Charny with Old Guy Tech TV, and we're here with Rob's Opinion with Sheriff John D'Agostini of El Dorado County. And we wanted to take an opportunity to talk a little bit about the situation that took place in Newtown, Connecticut. Unfortunately, that was a situation that is very, very sad. And I'm sure you're all aware of the fact that we had a shooting at the school. And the rhetoric that's going out there now, of course, is the anti-gunners are working hard to use this tragedy to promote their points of view, and they're wanting to ban firearms and high-capacity magazines. So they may say they're doing good, but it's my opinion that they're taking advantage of a tragedy. Anyway, again, so unfortunately, the story goes, and it's not the story, but the situation goes, there's a young man by the name of Adam Lanza that broke into Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut and killed, I think the count's over 20 now, children and adults. And from the information that we're getting, and hopefully we will get more details and data as time goes on, he did so by shooting his way into a locked a door into the school. And I've read various opinions on which firearm he actually used. He had 3 firearms with him. He had a Bushmaster AR-15 rifle, a Glock 10 millimeter, and a 6 Sauer 9 millimeter handgun. And that's what we're being told so far. And I want to start this conversation by saying that, that my heartfelt sorrows for the family that lost their children's and their loved ones. It's a very sad day for what happened, and it's not good. And nobody believes it's good. It's just a terrible, terrible thing, and there's no way around it. But unfortunately, we felt that it was important enough that we talked about it, and talk about what's going on with the government and the jumping right on the bandwagon of wanting to ban firearms in general. And so I have with me today our sheriff, John D'Agostini, and John and I are going to just talk about the situation a little bit, about what took place, and let's get into some of the details, if we can, John, and find out, how do we talk to we have to take a tragedy and take this tragedy and not let it overwhelm the discussions that we're having in this country, because we've got so many things, the financial crisis situations and so many things going on. And the firearm issue is one that's been high for both you and I in our beliefs about the ownership of firearms and the Second Amendment. And Washington and the White House are jumping on the bandwagon now to try to ban such weapons and ban high-capacity magazines. And we don't believe it's right. And again, my opinion is I really hate to see a tragedy taking place and these people taking advantage of it. And it just doesn't feel like it should be done this way. John, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience and your information that you have about what took place?
Well, Rob, you started off by telling the story about a young man, Adam Lanza, that broke into the school.
Right.
Well, let's back up a little bit, because it started before that.
Absolutely.
It started over I don't know how many years, and I'm sure we're going to learn, and I'm not going to comment, or I don't want to talk much about what we know according to the media so far of the incident, because that's all we know is what the media is telling us.
Right.
Once the full report, as the state police lieutenant, I guess is what he is the main PIO, point of contact, for the incident out there in Connecticut.
Right.
But what some of the things that we do know kind of is obvious is that this individual had some, whatever it was, extreme mental issues.
Mm-hmm.
And he started that morning by acquiring a legally acquired firearm from his mother.
From his mother, right.
So far, we're assuming that he killed his mother.
Right.
And then he went to the school and did what he did.
Right.
And then when he was confronted, from what I understand so far, when he knew that the police were there and he was going to have to confront them, that's when he took his life. And now, you know, of course the government's going to use this. The folks that are against firearms and against the Second Amendment. Right. And I don't care what they say. They can say, well, we do recognize the Second Amendment for what it is, and that's a bunch of baloney.
Right.
Even the fact that they're saying that they need to talk about gun control, they're not respecting the Second Amendment. To use this tragedy to bring this up, I mean, obviously, they're going to. I'd hate to say and go so far as they were waiting for a tragedy like this to occur, but
I believe the printing on the paper was already done, and they were waiting for the tragedy.
To set up a gun control task force.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Well, so here we have a situation where we've got an individual that was not able to legally own these firearms on his own. Okay, so we're back to the same situation again, where we see so often that these firearms are stolen, or they're the property of, in this case, his mother, and she did not take it upon herself to store those firearms in such a way that her son, with a mental illness, was able to get access to. And I think that's key to this whole discussion. He legally could not own those firearms. Mm-hmm. Okay, mm-hmm. So the only way this tragedy could take place was for him to steal them in some manner.
Absolutely.
And that's what he did. He was able to get access to these guns because his mother did not store them in the proper manner.
That's right.
Plain and simple.
That's right.
Yeah.
It wasn't the gun, it was the individual.
Exactly.
And no amount of gun control, no amount of disarming the law-abiding public is going to stop these types of incidents from occurring.
Right.
No amount of that type of legislation is going to stop this. The only way you're going to stop this is if somebody like that is confronted with an armed defender.
Right.
Period. It's not going to happen. You know, you go back to there's an article in here I was going through today and reading, and you go back to the beginning of time when and I think it was one of the fathers from the Columbine shooting that said this. One of the first crazy murders that took place with Cain and Abel. Did they turn around and ban clubs?
Right.
No.
Right. No.
You know, David and Goliath, okay? Did we all of a sudden, did they try to have laws for slings and stones? You know, it's not going to work. This is and for these same individuals that are saying we need gun control, they're spitting on our Constitution, because they're the same ones that are going to stand up and scream bloody murder when their First Amendment rights are violated.
Right.
Because this is what it says, this is what our founding fathers wrote in that document, and by God, that's what it means. But when you look at the Second Amendment, you know what it says, you know what it means. It was well documented at the time in the Federalist Papers and everything else that you read. We know why it was there, but yet they continue to try and interpret that a different way. It makes absolutely no sense to me. Daily, I mean, I have my detractors out there that don't agree with what I do, and that's fine. I'm not going to make everybody happy all the time.
Right.
They hit me in the blogs on the local newspaper, and they get letters at my office once in a while, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But that's their First Amendment right. Mm-hmm. How would those same people that are telling me that gun owners and guns, we need to disarm we need to have more gun control laws and get rid of guns in the hands of of everybody. How would they like it if I went to their house and knocked on the door, and the minute they came out, I arrested them because I said they were talking smack about me in the paper?
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Well, and that's part of the problem with this whole discussion. There doesn't seem to be... the anti-gunners are not willing to listen to the discussion. They bring things up like, well, you don't use it for hunting. Hunting has nothing to do with this argument. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't have a place in this. I have a good friend who's a school teacher, and that was the first thing he brought up. Oh, when I was, learning to hunt, it was always a one-shot kill. I didn't need a bunch of bullets. And I said, where in the Second Amendment does it say for hunting? The opinion is totally wrong. It's the wrong ideology altogether.
It was for self-defense and protection against a tyrannical government. That's what it was set there for. That's what they talked about.
And nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed. It's not a living document. It means what it says the day they wrote it down and they signed it.
Exactly.
That's what it means. Simple as that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what the parents and the families in the community and the first responders that are going through back there in Connecticut. I just can't. My mind won't even go there. I have kids. I have grandkids. For anyone to harm one of my kids or one of my grandkids and hurt one of those angels, my mind won't go there.
I know.
I can't go there. And I would do anything and everything to make sure that never happens to them. But limiting, restricting, legislating gun ownership, regulating, more regulation, is not the answer. I know that. I'm in the law enforcement business. I see the knuckleheads out there that have guns. Here's a perfect example. Since I've been in office, we're pushing 400% more concealed weapons licenses in El Dorado County. What's happened to the violent crime rate in El Dorado County?
It's gone down.
Gone down.
That's right.
Imagine that.
How about that?
Who wants to come up here and screw with our individuals and our law-abiding citizens up there when they don't know which one of them is going to stick a gun in their face and say, no, I'm not going to be a victim today.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
Well, and that was one of the arguments that they brought in. Well, you got 911. Okay, if you live in New York City, one of the major cities, and you call 911, you might get a response within 10 minutes. You might.
Well,
but as well as I do, the more you get rural, the less the response time is. It's up to us as individuals to protect ourselves.
It's the old saying, when seconds count, the police are minutes away.
Right.
It's the bottom line. I can't be there, folks.
No.
I mean, I'd love to say, yeah, you don't need guns because my deputies are going to be there to help you. Well, even they know that's not the truth.
Right.
It's not going to happen. We're not there. We can't be there. Now, if we had enough funding to post a deputy at every door in the county, that ain't going to happen.
Right. No, but that's why, in our situation, and thank God when you were elected, we brought back the ability to have our concealed carry permits, like you said, because there's been a big increase. And as you know, I'm one of the very first instructors, and I've still been still instruct on concealed weapon carry laws in California and how to get qualifications and all of that, and I believe it's really important. I believe that I never want to be a victim. If I'm going to get in a situation, I'm going to go down fighting, and too many people just roll right over. And that's the same situation with their guns. I'm not willing to roll right over. I'm going to stick to my beliefs and believe that we already have enough gun control laws. We don't enforce the laws we have. Putting more on the books isn't going to help anything because, once again, as we discussed, where do they get these guns? They steal them. And they're not going into the gun store and filling out the DOJ slip and waiting the 10 days and all. It's not happening.
No.
These crimes are committed with stolen firearms.
Absolutely. No, and the CCW, we screen our CCW holders.
Of course.
They have to meet the background checks. You screen them when you're instructing them.
Absolutely.
If you still have one that is, for whatever reason, you think is unstable or can't meet the qualification or whatever, you don't pass them.
That's right.
They come through our doors. We have them. If they have issues, we don't pass them. But it's not the person. It's the gun. It's the gun.
Yeah, yeah. Why? Don't blame the gun. The gun does that. That
Well,
gun
exactly.
is just like the pen,
yeah,
right?
That's right. That's right.
It's nothing more than just this pen. It's the
That's
same
right.
thing. So if I take this pen and I write something negative,
I got that backwards.
yes,
It's
you
not
did.
the gun.
But
it's
that's
the
a good
person.
pen. And but if I write something that is so
Right.
inflammable that somebody sees it and says, "Oh my God, that's going to start
Mm-hmm.
a war," by what I wrote down on the pen, is it?
Yeah.
Whose fault is it? Is it the
Exactly.
pen?
My
or is
dad.
it mine?
My dad says I can take a 1911, load it, cocked and locked, and lay it on that table. And as long as it's laying there,
Nothing's ever
gonna
going to
happen.
That's right.
It's not going to hurt a soul. Now, if some knucklehead picks it up and does something stupid with it, or somebody that doesn't know how to handle it,
Right.
then that's a problem. And that's another issue. When I was growing up, I talked to my grandfather and those generations, and even I, growing up in a rural area, I was very familiar with firearms. I was raised around firearms.
Right.
I was shooting. I had a BB gun when I was probably 4, 5, 6. I had a 22 when I was 8.
Yeah.
And I wasn't curious about them either. I knew what they did. And even toy guns. My father, one of the worst spankings I ever got, was playing with a toy gun and pointing it at my brother. A toy gun.
Right.
You don't point guns. No gun is a toy.
Right.
But yet, we've desensitized everybody to that. That's another issue. And you can go into the mental side of it. I saw something the other day since this tragedy in Connecticut, and it'll be curious to see what Lanza had on board or was coming off of the psych meds
Right.
that are prescribed nowadays.
Yeah, and we assume he was being treated by a
Sure.
doctor. So
Sure, and almost every, not all, but
Yeah.
nearly every one of these instances in the past 30 years, the suspect either had on board or was being treated for and was coming down from psychotropic medication without fail. Now, that leads me to one of the next issues. We are so hampered by the privacy laws, which I understand some of it. HIPAA, the
Right.
medical privacies, all that stuff. Nobody knows what these people are on, what they're dealing with, what the issue is, because their doctors can't tell anybody by law. By law, they can't let that information out.
right.
And I was talking to somebody the other day, and I'm not sure if I agree with this or not, but it was a statement that I thought about, and it put it out there, and I'll say it now. How about if, after every one of these incidents, after the coroner's report comes out and everything is said and done, that person's medical records get released, and those pharmaceutical companies, because you're going to be able to show a pattern. The families would have a suit. The families of the victims would have a suit against those companies. What's that going to do to the prescription rate and the use of those meds? All of them have, every one I've ever seen increases the rate of suicidal tendencies on them. That's a side effect that can occur.
Right.
What are we seeing?
Right. Right. Well, fortunately, though, the reality is the number is very small. But because there's a lot of people on medication, and it's the same situation with the number of gun owners per percentage of crimes that are committed. It's very, very low.
Yes.
We've got millions of firearms out there, and the reality is per population,
Per capita.
yeah, our death rate and the rate of homicide has gone down tremendously, and this is a report from the FBI themselves. And is that a result? What's that a result of? The ability to have a firearm, the ability to protect yourself. The fact is the knuckleheads out there don't know if you have a gun or not in carry states. I think it's done a lot to reduce violence.
I do.
So we have no way to actually document that,
Right.
but that's my opinion. We saw an older gentleman. There was an internet cafe. Everybody probably saw this video. It was on the news. And these knuckleheads come in bearing guns and wanting to hold up all these people that are at an internet cafe. One gentleman had a carry gun. He was almost 70 years old. He had a carry gun. He took care of these bad guys. He came out with his own gun and returned fire and chased them out of there and saved everybody's life. Now, do we hear the President of the United States stepping up and saying this man should get a medal? Because this man should get a medal.
No.
What about everybody says the reason why guns are so dangerous is because you can so easily kill it, so easily.
Well, it makes the ability. Okay, and for those of you, Jonathan is off camera, but he's bringing in comments that he's seeing from others and all that. And what was your point again, Jonathan, on that?
The question is.
Question.
What I've been hearing is a lot of people complain about firearms because you can reach out and touch somebody.
Okay.
It's basically point and click.
So the ease of being able to kill somebody with a firearm.
Yeah.
That's the question. Okay. So did not we hear in China sometime within the last month, one of their psychos went loose with that claw hammer and was in a school and actually killed over a dozen children with a claw hammer?
I haven't heard that, but okay.
Yeah.
Somebody just got in trouble for stabbing like 23 people.
I mean, yeah. And so England is going so far now is that they want to register knives. I mean, it's where do we stop? Okay, so maybe there is an ease of ability to do harm with a firearm, but there's also an ease to defend yourself
with the firearm.
With the firearm. Exactly.
Hence the Second Amendment.
Yes. And so, I was going over a number of things that we're going to see happen in the legislature and out of our president coming up here soon. And then, of course, we have Senator Dianne Feinstein, who they're going to reintroduce the assault weapon ban.
Who has a CCW, by the way?
Yes, at least she did at one time.
They did.
Yeah. And right. But see, also remember, she has armed bodyguards.
Yes.
So my question always was with her is, what if we disarm her bodyguards? How does she feel about that?
Yeah. Or the president.
Well, anybody, any of those senators and those guys at those levels, they have bodyguards.
Right.
So they don't need a gun because they have trained, personal protection there. But you hear, don't get me started on it because it's the same thing as why is it that the legislators have their own medical system? Why is it they get their own tax structure? Why is it? I mean, it's the same thing. What applies to us does not apply to them. They can always exempt themselves, and it drives me crazy. So once again, Dianne Feinstein, who keeps getting reelected in California and drives me friggin' nuts. I'm sorry, I don't agree with her on anything. They're going to reintroduce the assault weapon ban, and they're going to also reintroduce the small capacity magazines. Okay, because they believe 30 rounds is way too large. I won't tell them the fact is I can load 3 10-round magazines almost as fast as I could shoot just as a single 30. I won't let them know that because it makes no sense. And
well, then they'll ban those.
Well.
Don't want to ban it at all.
Absolutely.
You have a single shot. We'll let you. The Second Amendment, you can have a single
shot. Yeah. So so we've got all this stuff. So we know that Feinstein's going to do that. My understanding is Vice President Biden's been tasked with doing something on high capacity magazines. Did you hear about that?
I don't know. All I know is that this gun control task force. This gun.
Yeah.
Task force issue.
What do we need a task force for? I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Because they're going to be taking more of our rights away. Yeah. We have an open line too, right?
Yeah, we do. We haven't had anybody
call?
call in. They're all afraid to call. Come on, people, you can call in.
We have the number?
621-1210, 530-621-1210.
Good.
We're waiting for a call. And that'll help us because you know what we want you to be part of this discussion as well, because it's important that we get this message out there that as bad as this tragedy is, it's horrible. My heart goes out to these people. My heart goes out to the families. It cannot stop the private ownership of firearms. And I really believe so. One of my friends is a school teacher down in Southern California, and he's basically anti-gun. And when the talk was, let's arm teachers. Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh no, he says there's no way that a teacher should be armed in school. I don't believe that at all. And I pointed out the situation that we did with pilots. So when we had our situation, right, some of the pilots had the ability to carry on their airplanes if they wanted to. Why can't we do the same thing with teachers? We're not going to force them to do anything, but why don't we give them training and knowledge and give them the abilities so that we don't have these disasters? Am I that far off base out there? Am I that whacked out thinking that wouldn't this be a good idea if we don't have some of our teachers armed as well? And John, you were talking about the budget just a little while ago to me before we went on the air, and we talked about what it would reflect to have one law enforcement officer per school.
Well, I'll back up a little bit.
All right.
The deal with the teachers in the classroom. I don't. If a school district says this is what we want to do, I wouldn't be against it. They would have to sell that to the parents. And that's because that's who they answer to.
Right.
The board members would of that district. That's on them. School administrators, same thing, whatever it is. But then you move ahead to, I was talking with somebody yesterday who has, who's in the know, very close. He asked that I not mention his name, so I won't mention his name. But, I pulled up the federal budget and the discretionary programs by category. And if you look at it, the total base discretionary funding for 2012 was $1,057,600,000,000. Okay? And then you go down the list and you look at all the different things in the discretionary programs from defense and homeland security, veterans affairs, state, ag, commerce, education, energy, and education. Education in 2012 is $67.4 billion. Requested in 2013 is $69.8 billion. And you go on down, interior, justice, labor, state and other international programs, transportation, trade, all the way down. And you look at all of the amounts here. Now, in the nation, in the United States of America, there's not quite, but approximately 100,000 school sites. We checked this out.
Okay, actual campuses.
Public school sites, not private. Public school sites. Roughly 100,000. In El Dorado County, there's 48, I believe. There's 60 schools, but some of them are basically on the same site.
Right.
And you say, okay, let's average across this nation the cost of a peace officer for an agency, full boat, benefits, everything. The total cost, round it off and say it's $100,000 with everything. Some are going to be higher, some are going to be lower. Even at $100,000 per peace officer to staff, every school out there in the nation would be $10 billion. That the federal government could fund through Homeland Security or whatever. Okay? Now, this whole issue and the reason we're in here today talking about this, and the reason they have this task force, when Joe Biden's task force and everything, is in response to the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting.
Right.
Correct? Now, if it's in response to that, and they're trying to figure out how can we stop these types of incidents from happening, then there's your answer. You reappropriate $10 billion, which is budget dust compared to the total budget on this thing. You reallocate $10 billion, funnel it down through Homeland Security to every local jurisdiction to put one person at every school.
Right.
And these knuckleheads aren't going to go there. Now, what are they going to do next? They'll go to a mall. They'll do one like they did in Oregon. There's still going to be those things happen. It's still going to be out there because there's still evil in this world, no matter which way we look at it or how we deal with it. But that's one way to fix it right there. You want to stop our angels from getting hurt in these schools, put a cop at every school. I got an offer today from some retired law enforcement. Said, hey, we'd do it. We'd be there. Authorize us to do it. Get the superintendent of schools to buy off on it. We'd be there. But then you're dealing with, and God bless them, volunteers. But they're volunteers, and if they don't want to be there, they want to go on vacation.
Right.
They go on vacation.
Right.
Now, another positive that would come of that. You think about today and the relationship that law enforcement has with the community, which I'm working hard to overcome, and my deputies are working hard to overcome. That wall that's grown over the years. start a whole new generation of kids growing up knowing their local deputy or their local
Sure.
police officer because they
Right.
see him every day at school.
Right.
The deputy or police officer, they go to the functions, the school functions. That's their beat. I think it's a great idea. It's
Yeah.
a lot of money,
Right. Right.
but if that's what this council is convened for, this task force is convened for, then do that. But don't try and ban any more guns or make any more gun legislation, because I'm telling you right now, that is not going to do one thing to stop these types of incidents. Not one bit.
No, because we've already come out with a point that the majority of these people have stolen the guns. So their gun laws don't do anything to stop these type of situations because the guns are stolen anyway. And so more laws, enforce the laws we have in the books now, and let's not add any more.
If they're
Won't
hell
change
bent
anything.
on doing what they're going to do, they're going to get it done.
That's right.
So question.
Yeah.
Talk about the Sandy Hook.
Use a microphone. You're gonna do it.
You're going to do it right.
Do
kid.
it right. Which mic is it? One.
Yeah.
We're gonna put you on.
Whoa,
Oh,
So it might be a little loud. Am I a little loud?
that's better.
So my question is, what type of situation what should they be focusing on? Is it a gun issue, a mental health issue? Where do you think the system failed? Because obviously something failed somewhere.
well, in this situation, I think a couple of things happen. If we're going to take just this Sandy Hook elementary school situation.
Yeah, just that.
It-
Nothing else. Just
Well, what
that.
failed here was right here, John. Was I give you the pen, I strangle myself on my mic. What failed there was the mother to do her job properly, plain and simple.
Well, okay, besides the mother, because maybe I don't know, maybe there was, maybe she was just too much. Is there a way for somewhere where this wouldn't happen? Say if the parent just couldn't handle it, because obviously something failed there too. And I'm not saying the system should cover everything, but where just the situation government-wise. If we're going to talk the all-encompassing mighty government.
Well, the bottom line is who is this kid? He's obviously he's got mental issues. He's mentally disturbed. He's got social disorders, whatever it is. So if you look at that as the bottom line, then where have we failed the mental health industry?
Because that was, yeah.
Have we? We've seen that being cut over the years tremendously.
There's a huge, that was,
But
I read that somewhere, that one of the biggest cut to health has been the mental health.
one of the biggest
the last
has
20
been.
years has been.
Has been, but also on the other side too, though, is we've always legislated the symptoms instead of the problems,
True.
right? So with HIPAA and everything else that goes along with it, what did we do in the old days, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, when somebody was showing these types of tendencies? What
Sure.
happened with them? What happened with them?
Many of them were locked up.
They put them away because I mean I'm not trying to sound insensitive here, but I'm just gonna say it. There are people on this earth, in this world, that just should not be walking the street.
Absolutely.
Period.
Right.
Period. Not because they're criminals, but because they have extreme mental health issues
And they need
that
help.
they can't function, and they need help all the time. We used to have them in hospitals.
Right. Right.
Now we treat them with psych meds and we send them home.
Put them back out on the
And we
street.
pray that they take them
Yeah.
as
In which they
prescribed.
don't. The majority of them don't.
No,
No,
or
of
they
course not.
they're self-medicating and
Yeah.
they're using illicit drugs on the side too.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
where's the bottom line where we failed? It's not the gun.
Oh yeah.
It's
That was.
it's the mentally ill person. So how do we fix that? That's what they should be. This task force should be convened on, not on gun control.
Because that was my thing from the beginning, that it was I thought it was the mental health issue because the system failed the guy, and obviously we failed the children because there was nothing there to protect the kids besides unarmed people who lost their life trying to do their job protecting children.
They had no tools to protect children. By the way, we're in our chat board here. We are getting some comments, so people are watching. We have Stephanie. What's happening in my screen here? Let me get down to my other spot here. For example, don't drink and drive and don't shoot and drink. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer there, right? Lock up your guns.
Just have a carry permit. I think the gun community has something to offer. Police our own.
That's right. And Stephanie, thank you for calling. That's Kirby Root's wife. Kirby passed away here last year. Good friend of ours, and he was killed in a car accident, but a very pro firearms individual. And thank you, Stephanie, for watching and supporting us as well. So, and again, we have an open line. If you want to, put your 2 cents in there, don't be afraid. We don't bite. 621-1210, 621-1210. And also you can go on to our social stream and type in comments there as well. So, it was interesting. In Texas, Governor Rick Perry came out, and he was the one who said that if school districts decide that arming teachers is the best way to keep schools safe, so be it. So Texas, the governor's already there for it.
So be it.
Yep. So, and we're seeing that.
What about states like California? Well, this is my question, because California is as anti-gun as you can get without confiscating everything politically, besides a couple other states. What do you think the answer would be in California, where you have no gun zones, no this? What do you think the solution would be? I mean, because I agree with John, having a cop there, it would not only help the school, but it will also help relations.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is that they don't work. Even the gun laws in California don't work.
Oh, yeah.
They don't work anywhere. They've proven it don't work. Unfortunately, like Rob said, there's no way to measure the saves. There's no statistics that we gather on that. We gather homicide rates. We gather firearms assault rates.
Right.
We gather all that because we have an incident that's reported, it's documented, and it's transferred to the feds.
Exactly.
We document all that. But on the flip side, we have no way to track how many people actually save their life or save somebody else's life or stopped assaulted because they have a firearm or may have a firearm.
Right.
There's no way to track that. So in California, the laws don't work. They don't work. They're never gonna work. I'd like to be a fly on the wall during these task force meetings that they're having. I'd like to know what they're talking about.
And I can guarantee you, there's not two sides on the task force. You're talking about these people have an agenda.
They said that we're going to have all the stakeholders at the table, but they've already eviscerated the NRA.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah.
They're not. How could they be? They're not going to let them be a stakeholder.
They're not going to let them in there. No.
You know.
So no, who are they going to do? Fortunately, there are some legislators that are pro firearm, and some of them are coming up and they're saying, you know what, I'm thinking about carrying more often now. I mean, I've been reading a lot of this stuff from many other people. But mental illness. Let's go back to the mental illness situation for a second in the HIPAA laws. It's a two-edged sword. In some respects, I don't want big government into my private life. Okay, that I don't really want. What I take and what my physical condition is between myself and my doctor.
I agree.
Now, if I'm a psychologist and I've got a patient that I've been treating who shows signs of whatever they're looking for, I understand people that get lack of sleep and they don't take their medications regularly, and there's a whole series of things they look for. Now, again, he cannot go to you being law enforcement. Let's say he can't go to law enforcement and say, I have this person I'm worried about, here's his name and address.
Not unless there's a direct threat.
Right.
Not unless there's a direct threat. He
can't.
He cannot.
He can't.
No.
So can we make exceptions in this situation in the HIPAA laws where if a doctor is afraid that this individual is a danger to himself and others, do we allow him to come forward?
Where do we draw the line?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, where do you draw the line? Do you base it on a diagnosis? Do you base it on where do you put the threat level? I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, I'm not either. And
but there seems that there to me that there should be some way for them. You know, for instance, you can't buy a handgun or you don't get a CCW or whatever if you're adjudicated mentally ill.
Right.
That's adjudicated.
Right. That's through
after
the court
the fact.
system. That's
Again,
right.
due process.
Right.
So we were relying on the Constitution. Now, what? We got a
Hey,
call.
here we go. We got a caller. Let's take a call. Hi, caller. This is Rob.
Rob, this is Chuck Smith from El Dorado Hills.
Hey, Chuck. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good.
Hello, Chuck.
Well, let's get your opinion about what we're talking about.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm starting to. I saw a bumper sticker the other day that said, "I love my country, but I fear the government," and I think that just sums it up immeasurably. I have a question for both you, Rob, and Sheriff. How can we, as ordinary citizens, mitigate this anti-gun legislation and preserve our Second Amendment gun rights? Well, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I'll jump in and then I'll let John talk about it. My problem in California, Chuck, is that we don't have the votes. It's kind of like if you look at what happens in California, California is split east and west. Okay,
Right.
If you look at California, all the west part of California is all very liberal and has the base of population. They've got the big cities, L.A. to San Diego, and then San Francisco on down. I mean, the votes are there. So in California, we're dead in the water. We don't really have a voice unless you know something that I don't. John, what about you?
Right. You're
Well,
right.
I'll jump in a little bit because it's not just east and west, but there's also the north state sheriffs, Humboldt, Del Norte,
Right.
Mendocino County,
Right.
even Mendocino County. Sheriff Tom Allman, who's I've got to know pretty well, very pro Second Amendment guys. So it is that core right down the coast that is the issue with the votes. Now, Chuck, what I tell folks is, we've all heard the thing, well, write letters and write emails to your legislators. I'll tell you one of the most effective ways, and it's the quickest ways, if you have the phone numbers, is just call them. Because a staffer has to write that note down and pass it to them. Typically, your emails and your letters get screened, and all they get is a note, hey, you got 20 calls or 20 notes on this for and 24 against. They don't get the bottom line and the context of what the letter was about. But if you call, that staffer has to write that information down on a piece of paper and relay that, usually gets relayed to that legislator. So calls are the most effective, in my opinion.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'll tell you, I worry about the future and not only our gun rights, but what's just coming down in Washington and Sacramento as well, for that matter.
Yeah, and support, there's a lot of good organizations out there. The NRA is one of them, Gun Owners of America and Gun Owners of California. And I'll give a shameless plug right now. Gun Owners of California has an event coming up here in El Dorado County in February at Girard Vineyards in up between Placerville and Coloma. And I don't have the date. Do you have the date of that, Chuck?
Yeah, it's February 8th.
February 8th. It's a great cause. The neat thing about Gun Owners of California is all the money that is raised goes right to the fight for our Second Amendment rights. Unlike some other organizations out there where some of it gets funneled off for different issues. But every dollar that's raised goes to support the fight against, protecting our Second Amendment rights.
And the other thing I can suggest is if you can't make the event in a situation where I can't, I'm going to go ahead and write a check anyway and send donations in. So they will be glad to take the donations, because we've got to hire attorneys and we've got to fight the fight, and it takes money. And you know they have Gun Owners of California has an executive. He's the what is he considered? What Sam Parada's considered? He's the executor of the Gun Owners of California. He's a full-time person. He's out there knocking on doors and talking to politicians and working hard for our gun situation. So we need. That's what it takes. It's going to take money. You know, we're going to have to break loose.
Let me conclude my call by thanking you, Rob, for continuing to be president of the El Dorado Rod and Gun Club, and thank Sheriff John D'Agostini for keeping us safe and for being such a forthright, honorable man as our sheriff. I truly thank you both for the job you're doing.
Well, thanks, Chuck. We both appreciate it, and we're going to keep on fighting. And it's folks like you that help us, you know, by letting us know that we're doing the right job.
Thank you, Chuck.
You're very welcome, and my sincere thanks to both of you.
I have a question.
Thank you.
Good.
Very much,
Okay.
Chuck.
Thank you.
Okay. Take care, Chuck. Thanks. Yes, Jonathan.
So, to get back to the Sandy shooting, I guess this is a question more for John. What is, I guess, the normal procedure if something like this happens? What is the first response, I guess?
Well, we train, and we have a rather extensive training program for active shooter. Of course, all this evolved out of the Columbine shooting. Used to be before that, you know, no matter what the incident was, we always tried to figure out and identify what we were getting into before we actually went into it. Since Columbine, any active shooter, whether it's at a mall, whether it's at a shopping center, at a school, no matter where it is, we're going in. We're going directly for that threat. Typically we set up, and this is no secret stuff, this is all over the web, you can find this. We set up in 3-man cells. Some agencies could do a 2-man cell. And we go directly to the threat. If we hear gunfire, that's where we're going. We're going right to it. Now, there's a lot of concerns, you know, for maybe knucklehead set up booby traps, things like that. In all these situations, we really haven't seen any of those.
Right.
Could it happen someday? Absolutely. But we're going for that threat. So basically, it all comes down to response time. How fast can we get to this scene? Now, in El Dorado County, if we're handling a cold burglary call out in South County, or with a deputy or two, we're handling another domestic call down in the West End, down by Cameron Park or El Dorado Hills, and maybe we got another deputy or two handling a call up in Pollock Pines or Camino, and we have our resources spread out, and something comes out of an active shooter call next to Central here. You know, it could take 5-10 minutes before we can get a two-man cell or whatever to actually go in and
Sure.
move towards that threat. But we go right for the threat. That's why, you know, I'm very, very proud of our troops. These guys and gals are just so professional. I went to the last active shooter training that they had down in, I believe it was one of the schools down in El Dorado Hills area. It was amazing to watch them train, and the efficiency in which they move towards the threat and they do their job is amazing. I have no doubt in my mind, you know, should a tragic event ever occur like this, the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office will be responding in the most appropriate, effective, efficient manner possible. I pray to God that never happens.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's what we do. We train for it. We're ready for it. We hope it never happens.
So, did we ever hear how quick the response was?
I've heard everything
Sandy Hook?
from 2 or 3 minutes to 20 minutes, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
So we don't really know how
That's
quickly.
a huge under-over.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got
Hey,
another
they
phone
got
call.
another caller. Hi, this is Rob.
Yeah, Rob, hi. This is Thomas Block from Rescue. I got a question for the sheriff.
Hey, Thomas.
Hey, Tom. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is regarding the recent shooting at the school and CCW carriers in El Dorado County, and I believe there's still a restriction that the sheriff has regarding 1,000-foot proximity for those who carry, and I was wondering if that's ever going to be lifted.
That was a restriction that was under my successor, and that was under the exemption for that, I believe, is 626.9 of the Penal Code,
Right.
which actually exempts that. I don't have that restriction anymore on our CCWs. We cleaned up a few of those, including the one that said if you're under the influence of any drugs. Well, we know what common sense says. We know what we meant when that restriction was written. However, what if you're taking blood pressure medicine or
Right.
or whatnot? So we've
I was
cleaned.
concerned about that too. That's good to hear. I was not aware that had been lifted.
Yeah, we cleaned that up. But you know, obviously, if you are carrying concealed and you're in one of those areas and somebody sees you with it, that in and of itself is a violation of our policy on carrying a concealed weapon.
No, I understand. I realize that it has to be concealed. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So yeah, we've cleaned. Excuse me, we've cleaned that up
Well, thank you
to
very
match
much.
what the law
Thank
says.
you for your great service.
Thank you.
Hey, Thomas, thanks for calling. We appreciate it.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. One of the comments that we're getting on our comment board here is also says, if you can't trust a teacher with a gun, can you trust them with your children? That's an interesting statement, huh?
I
Good
like
point,
that.
huh?
That's a very good point.
That's a very good point. Actually, I'm glad Thomas talked about that situation on the CCW, because you and I have had some long discussions
Yes.
about that,
Yes.
and it's good to know that we've addressed
We've
that.
cleaned those up.
That's good. You know, we were talking about mental illness, and one of the things, there's a psychologist in Sacramento area of all things who was talking about, and I'll actually read a little bit of what he said here. He said, the onset of serious mental illness such as schizophrenia and bipolar disorder often occurs during the teen years. We'll take this call. We'll get back to that. Hi, this is Rob.
Robert, Chris.
Hey, Chris. How are you?
Good, sir.
So what do you got to say?
I got a question for John there, and this also pertains clear back to Arizona. You know, being a carrier of a concealed firearm, what is the issue if you jump in, draw your firearm, take out the perpetrator, and then the law enforcement shows up? What is to protect us to make sure that we are not taken out as the perpetrator?
Well, part of the CCW training that you take should talk about those exact type of incidents. The first thing you're going to do is, as soon as the threat's neutralized or is no longer there, you're going to holster your weapon and stand there and wait for law enforcement and show your hands and obey all lawful commands and everything else, so that when we get there, we're not dealing with we don't know who the shooter is. We don't know what's going on when we first show up. Don't have that gun in your hands. Whatever you do, don't point it at the police.
Well, that's exactly what I trained in the basic firearms training, is the fact that you get the firearm out of your hand. And of course, the incident in Arizona, the law enforcement was there, so if in fact a legal citizen had drawn his firearm, how would they have identified him as the shooter or not the shooter?
Oh, you were talking about the situation with Giffords, right?
Yeah, and this is stressing on, you know, it took 1 to 5 minutes or 3 to 5 minutes to get to Sandy Hook. Well, say you're still taking out the perpetrator at the instance that the law enforcement comes in through the door, you're standing the chance of being shot yourself.
Well, unfortunately, I mean, that would be a touchy situation. Hopefully you would have already engaged and we're done and we're safe.
Well, you or I probably would have, but
and you know, and I'm sure you teach this too in the CCW classes, the best thing you can be, and these are you know, the Sandy Hook incident, the Gifford incident, the Columbine, the theater, these are rare. And they say they happen too often, but they are very rare. For the police, if you're a CCW holder and you know the cops are there, you're not even going to engage anyway. You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. So, I mean, that's a good question, and it's a tough decision. But you should not be in a position where the police should have any reason to identify you as a suspect.
Well, in my situation, my classroom situation, discussion is if you're in a situation and law enforcement is there, you take yourself out of the situation as quickly as possible, and that's generally putting your firearm down and doing whatever the commands are, and or laying on the ground and stopping the situation altogether.
So you're saying no John McClane from Die Hard?
No. We get like Rob said, get down on the ground and prone. Yeah. I know all the CCW instructors that I've talked to, and they all agree on this. And unfortunately, it's the way that our legislative system, our legal system works. Your life is going to change if you engage in. If you're completely justified, and you engage to protect your life or somebody else's life, your life is going to change.
Yep, absolutely.
Period. No matter, it's just the way, that's the culture that we live in now. You're going to go through the whole system. You may or you probably won't be charged if it's justifiable, but then you're going to end up with the wrongful death suits from the family. You're going to end up with everything else. Your life will change. But I'll tell you what, I'd rather go through that and have my life changed than be laying in a box and not be able to spend my later years with my family.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with that. I agree with that very much, too. And my point was getting that out to the people more so than to myself or you or Rob, is the fact that if you're going to engage, make sure that you do follow the orders and directions of law enforcement so that you do not have the firearm in your hand when they come through the door.
Yeah.
If possible. And if law enforcement is present, do not engage at all.
Right.
Because we're taught in law enforcement, fortunately, it's a good thing, and it's the way it works. We are very reactionary, meaning we don't shoot, we don't engage lethal force unless we have and we can articulate and prove that there's a reason why we use that deadly force. So even in a situation, say the Sandy Hook incident, and from what I understand from the news is the suspect was still shooting and was still a threat even when the police came in. When they announced themselves, he heard them coming and then took his own life. Well, if they would have come around the corner and said, drop the gun, if he didn't have the gun pointed at them and they couldn't see him engaging a victim, they would have said, drop the gun. If he'd have dropped the gun, he'd be another suspect. We'd be running him through the court system. So you as a CCW holder, the mere fact you have a gun in your hand, should not be a reason for a deputy or a peace officer to engage unless, given the extenuating circumstances, and every incident is different. But we are very, very reactionary. The best thing to do is get that gun out of your hands, reholstered or whatever, and like Rob said, get down on the ground and then start obeying lawful orders.
Right. Don't make yourself a threat, and and then you should be okay. So good question, Chris. Thanks for calling.
Well, thank you guys, and thank you, John. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay. Yes, Jonathan?
My question is, since we've talked about CCWs, why don't you give a little bit more information about what they are for maybe the people watching don't know? I mean, just kind of a...
We could do this quickly, but we're a little off topic.
Quick.
Yeah.
Well, I think it is. I think it's on topic if we're still talking about the Sandy, or what happened in Newtown, Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the argument is if these teachers were able to carry guns, the question would be, how would they be carrying it? Because obviously would you want kids to see it? Or, like wearing it on your hip, like open carry all the time? Would you conceal it? I guess that's part of the question too, I think. How would you do it?
Well, concealed is concealed. Nobody should ever know you're carrying a weapon.
Exactly.
Anybody should never know I'm carrying a weapon when I'm dressed like this. Concealed is concealed. On a school, I mean, it's one of the issues with school guns on the schools, and I mean, we can go back and forth, and I have opinions back and forth, arming teachers or whatever. And I was talking to somebody last night, and they said, I said, kids are so inquisitive, and they're not raised with firearms anymore. like I was.
Or I.
And they're just inquisitive. For a teacher to be carrying concealed, how are they going to do that every day of the week when they're teaching throughout the whole school year, and that is never going to be found out, you know? An administrator is different. They're typically sitting in the office. What do they do with it if they go out on campus? That's a whole nother argument. But the bottom line is CCW, concealed carry weapon, is concealed. Nobody should ever know. And I know all the instructors teach. You got to be very, very careful about that. Even going to the grocery store and reaching up for
That's right.
for that cereal box on
Yep.
the top shelf, you know.
Yep.
It's a touchy subject, but it's stuff that we need to be talking about.
I know one of the things, since I know some of the instructors around here, one of the issues that they'd love to do is show kids guns. Go on a campus or go somewhere where they introduce children to firearms, the proper way to if you see one, what do you do with it? You know, proper gun 101 type of thing.
Well, we have that in the NRA Eddie Eagle program. You have McGruff. Didn't McGruff have something about that on one of his things?
Yeah,
about
I think
see
so.
a gun, don't
Yeah.
touch it.
Eddie
But
Eagle's
I don't
the
want
biggest
to.
one.
We got to be careful because these are kids, and we got to respect. No matter how we believe, we still have to respect parents' rights.
Oh no, I agree.
And if you know, that's
Well,
that's
I
big.
get
I guess
asked this question all the time, and let me tell you how I answer it. If you make something the forbidden fruit, that's when you run into a problem. Okay, when children are of the age, they're curious as to what these things are. Like I did with my own kids, I showed them. You know, I didn't let them handle them. I showed them what they are. You know, we took the guns apart. We looked at what they are. They got to hold them when they were empty, and you know they looked at it. So my theory is get rid of the forbidden fruit situation. Now they know what it is. Now as they get older, instruction continues. You know, then we go to the range and we learn what, you know, proper techniques and safe handling of guns. And you keep this going through their lifetime. You know, you keep educating your children. And you find that these families that do that have fewer and fewer problems with the
Well,
kids getting the
even
guns.
out in the you can tell people that were raised with guns against people that weren't, just in the hunting fields.
Oh, sure.
When
Yeah.
when I don't have it in the last few years because I haven't had time, but I love to hunt. That's what I do. I love to go quail hunting, dove hunting, pigeon hunting, pheasant hunting, duck hunting. And just by the way people handle their firearms when they're crossing
there's
a
a
fence,
foul
when they're walking.
Foul trend.
What's that?
There's a foul trend. Bad joke.
You can tell, and the comfortableness of it, and how comfortable I feel walking with them or
Oh,
being
yeah.
around them.
Absolutely.
But we don't. It's getting rarer and rarer and rarer. Yeah, somebody could have hunted for 5 years, but that lifetime, like I did, I grew up. Like I said, I had
Right.
BB gun when I was a little kid, and you never pointed at anybody. I was raised with that. That was pounded into my head.
Right. Absolutely.
Another one. Good.
Oh, here we go. Hi, this is Rob.
Hi, this is Jeremy Myers. I'm calling in just to applaud the thoughts of Sheriff D'Agostini with regard to the increased presence of law enforcement on campus. You know, I have been a school administrator for a long period of time, and I can tell you that the experience I've had with school resource officers on campus is that they are valued far beyond you know, the fact that they carry a weapon. As Sheriff D'Agostini said, they interact positively with the student population, with teachers, and become really an integral part of the campus, and have really a very positive influence on students, and particularly with regard to students' perceptions of law enforcement. And so I applaud him, and I think that's a direction we ought to continue to move, and particularly with regard to, you know, federal consideration of students being safe on campus. And that absolutely has to be our priority, and it should be a national priority. And I would love to see some additional interest taken to what Sheriff D'Agostini has proposed.
Well, Jeremy, I want to thank you for calling in. I know we've had a couple conversations over the last couple days, and you're much more well-spoken than I am about that whole. Yes, it is about that whole side of it, and it does make a lot of sense. And coming from a school administrator, it even has more weight and adds more weight to it, and I really appreciate it. And also the fact that you know you're not an anti-Second Amendment person, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but is that fairly rare in the education society?
You know, I don't know the extent to which it is or it isn't, to be honest, John. I mean, I think more of my considerations around the Second Amendment and gun control, I worry about the potential for collateral damage, that as there are more controls, that there's the law of unintended consequences, that you know, these things begin to go underground. They tend to be more criminalized, and as they become more criminalized, you see the rate of violence increase around guns. And you know, I'm just speaking for myself and off the top of my head, but I look at the war on drugs, and you know that all of the collateral damage that is created, largely in other countries, albeit, but nevertheless, these are human lives. No matter where they are.
Right. And I am reading here. I'm sorry, I kind of got distracted a little bit, but I think it goes back to a statement that we made earlier about as we keep trying to legislate the symptoms rather than just get directly to the cure. You agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that, and there's certainly in my own mind there's limitations that probably the two of you wouldn't agree with. I do have to, in all honesty, wonder about the need for 30-round banana clips and assault weapons in the hands of citizenry. I think that by and large, those weapons belong in the hands of people like you.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just my own opinion.
All right.
And moreover, the fact that those kinds of weapons belong in the hands of trained officials like you and like your deputies,
right.
It brings me right back to my initial point, or your initial point, really, that I appreciate is, that if the safety of our students is our primary concern, as it should be, then certainly the federal government, as a part of their task force, ought to be looking at how to increase the presence of law enforcement, because they're welcome on every campus I've ever been associated with.
Well, I appreciate that, Jeremy, and we talked about this too, you and I, the relationship between local law enforcement in El Dorado County and the school districts. We have a great relationship. The El Dorado County Sheriff's Office has 2 school resource officers that are assigned to the schools. They are typically at the high schools in the area. They do get to the elementary schools as well. We also have an MOU between local law enforcement and the County Office of Education in regards to dealing with these types of issues, and also drugs on campus, and bullying and all of that as well.
Yeah, that's probably the best example of exactly what I think you're describing, is that we have a mutually agreed upon protocol which exemplifies the cooperation between your office and education, and so that we all know what to expect in certain circumstances, and we're each committing to maintaining that relationship, which, as you described in El Dorado County, is simply extraordinary. Whether that's your school resource officers that are on campus, whether that's the Placerville Police Department that responds to issues within their jurisdiction,
South Lake Tahoe,
the probation being on
yes.
our campuses, it is greatly appreciated by the education community.
Well, and it's greatly appreciated by us that we have that relationship, because God forbid we ever do have something like this. Hopefully our guys will be there. So, but Jeremy, thank you very much.
And a letter to him, Jeremy. I mean, I appreciate you calling in there, and I'll be glad to discuss the 30 round magazine situation with you or not, because you and I have definitely a different opinion about that. But the school situation is really an important thing for us to talk about, and I'm glad you called and brought that up. And speaking of which, while we have you on the phone here, and you and the sheriff can speak to this, one of our listeners is writing in, does the El Dorado County schools have emergency response plans, and are they exercised? I guess they're also talking about a gun emergency response plan. So,
and is the sheriff included?
Yeah. Is it county? Yeah.
And I talked about that a little bit ago about the annual trainings that we do for active shooter. Every school site has a plan. They have lockdown drills. They have a plan, and we have a plan as well as to how to respond and how to interact with the district in such an event.
Right.
Would you like to add to that, Jeremy?
Yeah, just to say that we develop those plans cooperatively with law enforcement, specifically OES, the Office of Emergency Services, so that we're not developing those plans in a vacuum. That we're following their advice. They understand the demands and limitations on school sites, and those plans are tailored to each particular site, and we share those plans.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Jeremy, for that call and that discussion, and that helped quite a bit. And like I said, maybe at a later date we'll have another discussion.
Well, me and Jeremy and Vicky Barber, we're going to be talking more too. So thank you, Jerry.
Right, we're going to be meeting in January, so we look forward to that.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Good.
You guys have a nice evening, and thanks for the conversation.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you for calling very much.
You bet.
So that, and I know a professor, she just recently retired. You were talking about the mentality in the school districts, and she's appalled at the attitudes, and she's a college professor. She's appalled at the attitudes of some of the teachers. They've gone so liberal in every sense of the word, including anti-gun completely. She's a big trap shooter. She's a golfer. She does a lot of things. She says she's glad she's out of it now because she can't take it anymore.
Mm-hmm. I have a question. After watching all this news coverage, a lot of it comes down to saying you hear all the talking heads, no matter what side of the fence they're on. They always say the same thing about the culture of violence. This is my question. And I think it has to do, me personally, about introducing kids to firearms. If you taught people, the children, the proper respect of firearms, the proper respect of human life, do you think it would change the culture of violence, where people, realize how dangerous a gun is? Because you see them on TV all the time, you play them on video games, but in real life, some kids have no introduction to how dangerous they are if you don't know what you're doing.
Well, that's a good one there, because there is a discourse between reality and non-reality, and that's one of the discussions that the professionals are having about the violent single-person shooter games that are out there and the violence that's in these computer games. Where is that? Do they realize that that's pretended and not real? Is there a connection or a disconnection there?
The desensitization part of it, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
we just had a commenter type in here that there was $200 million in federal funds to schools for training, security, equipment, and police resources that were not renewed in the 11-12 fiscal year budget.
Yeah.
That tells you a lot about which direction are we going, and what me and Jeremy agree on is which direction should we be going, as far as curtailing those types of events.
Yeah, it's just I want to read this one little section that came through here real quick, and because I find it's interesting, and then maybe back to the whole anti-Second Amendment situation, but leading Sacramento psychiatrist says family and friends should be aware of the warning signs of possible mental illness and indications of the potential for violence. So this gentleman's saying its family needs to be aware. This gentleman, this Adam Lanzer's mother, should have been aware of the potential for violence. And it says here, if you find that a relative or friend isn't sleeping at night, you better get someone to help them out. He said lack of sleep is an early indicator of emotional illness, along with changes in appetite and frequent mood swings. Explosive behavior to the extent of endangering other people or breaking things, that's another sign. These problems may improve or get worse. And the psychiatrist said he's not surprised to learn that the shooter in Newtown school massacre was only 20 years old. He said that the onset of serious mental illness, such as schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, occurred during the teen years or early 20s. I'm not surprised, and if you look at the suicide rates, it spikes up at around that age. So we've got an age group. He goes on to examples. Here's an example: a young man involved in the shooting in Virginia Tech. He was 23 years old. Columbine High School. Eric Harris was 18, and he was diagnosed with depression and anger. Jeremy Holmes, that guy in Aurora, theater situation, he was also diagnosed as mentally ill. So there's signs, and I think we need to make sure that we get the families involved with the situations, because they're the ones with these people, all day long, and they have to take some responsibility for these situations. We can't keep blaming the guns. All right, we got to point back at the people that are doing this, and as the psychiatrist says, the family needs to be really engaged in this situation.
But then again, since then, we've heard over and over in the media and everywhere else, and I know this to be true. We talked about the budget cuts to mental health and things like that. Where do the families go? And what can they do? They can't, if they come to us, that's great. We can go do a CIT evaluation, and we can say, yeah, he's going to be on our radar. But we can't do anything about it.
Well, here's
at that point.
Well,
really.
Of course, because you have to do something after something's been done.
Absolutely.
All right, but the situation with the family is,
So
such as his mother, she should have not had those weapons available for the young man.
You're right.
Period.
You're right. But if then they go and they report it to the mental health, or they try and say, hey, I need to get some help for my kid.
Right.
And then the mental health is turning them away left and right because well, they're not a threat to themselves or others at this time. I mean, it's that part is really messed up.
Yeah.
Well, that's confined this part of the argument to our community. Are there local establishments that will help if somebody has these symptoms, or is there anything like county does, or anything just curious, just talk about our little.
Well, we have the PUF in El Dorado County, County Mental Health. We have Health and Human Services through all that. They're doing the best they can with what they have, but they're stretched thin. They're stretched to the end of their rope as well, and then you have the HIPAA issues again that I brought up earlier that come in. Maybe they can't get the full information. Maybe they don't have the full information at that time. They're not going to go based just upon what mom and dad say at that time.
Right.
Person says, "Look, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me," and they know what to say.
Sure.
They know how to play the system. Some of these folks.
Oh, absolutely.
And they fall through the cracks. And again, I'll go back to something we said earlier. There's evil in this world. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
We're not going to, no law, you're not going to be able to legislate or cure these symptoms and all these issues. There's knuckleheads out there.
Yeah.
It's the bottom line.
And there always has been.
Always has been. I mean, you go back to the story of what Lizzie Borden back when, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, there you go.
Always been the situation. So we do have a couple of comments also. Pierre Pon, that's Chris Ellercan. 811 million cops in school programs to hire resource officers who worked inside the schools was ended in 2005. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what he's saying. And then Sandy Hook firefighters and law enforcement officers will need some after-action counseling.
Absolutely.
So hopefully that the authorities in that situation, because I know that the descriptions from the medical personnel was just awful.
Absolutely. And we go, and he goes on, sheriff's plan for this. We have the Sierra Law Enforcement Chaplaincy here that's headed up by Chaplain Tim Thompson.
Right.
And not only do they, you'll at the scene of any violent crime or anything, the chaplains are there not only for the victims, but for our staff, the sheriff's office staff as well. And that
Right.
includes everybody, the first responders, it includes the dispatchers, anybody that was involved. Whenever we have an incident like that, the chaplaincy is right there with us. They're right there by our side, and God bless them, because they are a huge resource for us. We also have peer support and a lot of other resources available for anybody should they, be involved in an incident like that. We do have plans for that.
You have to do that. Well, okay, just real quick, we had a situation in the county that just within the week. Now, are we taking care of those officers?
Yes, we are. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I can't talk much about the incident because the investigation is not complete yet.
I wasn't even going to bring it up.
I was there that night, and
Yeah.
I made sure I went and talked to our deputies,
Right.
and made sure that they were okay. They've already done a stress incident debrief to make sure that everybody's doing okay.
Good.
Like I said, we take care of them.
Good. Well, when everything's out, and we'll talk about it then, but I just want to make sure that the guys are being taken care of. So
yes,
that's really important. Now, what do you think? Here's something that really just was amazing to me. These gun stores, and even Walmart and Dick's Guns, and all of a sudden now they're reacting. They're getting a knee-jerk reaction to the situation that happened, and they're stopping the sale of AR-style firearms.
Well, making the price of all the magazines and accessories for said guns extremely expensive.
So on one hand, they're taking advantage of the situation, and the other, their knee-jerk reaction is, we're going to pull those guns off the shelf.
Yeah.
That's private enterprise, because I know there's a lot of dealers in Sacramento and down the west side here that are they're selling guns hand over fist.
Well, and that's the problem, and that's the situation when President Obama got reelected. Gun sales have just flown off the hook. The manufacturers cannot manufacture enough firearms to keep up with the demand, and that's because of what we are talking about right now with Vice President Biden starting his investigation into high cap magazines and everything else, and the fear that the assault weapon ban is going to go take place again, and also there's an awful lot of people that are worried that there's going to be confiscation.
Sure.
Now, should we be worried about confiscation?
Not in El Dorado County.
Okay. Well, but what do we think? How? I mean, do you believe that our government could get to such a situation where they would go ahead and
I think, and I'm watching. I'm currently constantly watching the Supreme Court and see what they're doing. And we had Heller, which was really good, and then we had this recent one, and I can't remember the name of it again.
Yeah.
That basically took Heller one step forward, or it wasn't a Supreme Court decision. It was a district court, appeals court, and said basically, Heller said, what's the point of saying the right to keep and bear arms in your home to protect yourself when that extends beyond your home, coming to and from work? So it was in response, I believe, to Vermont's ban.
Yeah, there was one that overturned Illinois'.
Illinois. That was it. So I think when it comes down to the constitutionality of whatever they come up with, the Supreme Court has to rule in favor of what the Second Amendment and recent cases that they have ruled on.
Well, that's what they're supposed to do.
That's what they're supposed to do. Yeah, absolutely. Gun confiscation goes beyond the Second Amendment. Now you're delving into Fourth Amendment issues and due process issues, everything else. So to do that would be unbelievable. And I pray that there's many other sheriffs out there that understand that oath of office that we took, and that every peace officer takes when they get into this job, and every military person takes when they get into the military. And unfortunately, all our legislatures also take when they take office.
Yeah, right.
But that oath of office, you know, it's to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't see gun confiscation hitting the table.
Yeah.
I just don't. I can't fathom how they could even think that they could get away with something like that.
Well, I think it's pretty easy for us to bring up an awful lot of pictures of Germany in the 1930s when they went around and started taking all the firearms away from the Jews, and then it just kept going. And I think we need to keep that in the forefront. We have to learn from history and remember history and keep that. Now, you know, I know everybody's doing this knee-jerk reaction, like I said, the stores and all that. It's a knee-jerk reaction to what took place. We won't argue about the fact that it's a tragedy, but folks, you don't start taking away firearms from individuals. You know what? You just don't.
Nope. I agree.
And we're going to have to fight it.
I have a question. What happens if, say, legally, the sheriff's department has to temporarily take the person's firearms for whatever legal reason? What is, I guess, the process of that? Both.
Give me a reason.
Okay, say for some reason this guy has been very violent towards his girlfriend, and for whatever reason.
Domestic violence.
Yeah, for some reason.
1228.5 is what it used to be. I'm not sure what the new code is because they moved them all.
Yeah, they did.
There's a legitimate reason for that, and it's been proven. And the law is what the law is. We go out to a scene of a domestic violence, and there's firearms in the house. We have the right to take those firearms for safekeeping. In the event of a crime, because that has been proven or shown to prove that it cuts down on when we leave, that somebody doesn't take the gun and go shoot the other party. Those have been vetted out. They've shown that, okay, because of this, the due process part of it is this: we're not taking your firearm. It's for safekeeping. Whatever. If you're convicted of a felony, convicted felons shouldn't have firearms, and we know that. And yeah, they may come up with all kinds of reasons for that. I think is where you're getting to start chipping away to take it. But the end result is going to be, okay, right now these black guns are now unlawful to possess. You have to turn them in. Number one, it's a violation of the Second Amendment. There's no due process. There's nothing there.
Right.
Even if the government says, okay, but we're going to compensate you for that, how do you appeal it? You know, the due process is completely wiped out. And I'm not a lawyer.
Fourth Amendment is totally out the window when you start doing that.
The funniest part about that is the governments, if they do for some reason get that, they're going to get an awful lot of lowers. Because technically that's the only part of the gun.
Hey, you know, I know... John, you've got another engagement coming up. We had our 6:30, a little after 6:30. I bet we could keep going, but we're going to have to do this again, I think, and thank the callers and all the people that wrote in there. If you guys like what we did, let us know, and we'll schedule another show because there's plenty of things to talk about. And, of course, Old Guy Tech always has a once-a-month crime beat with Sheriff D'Agostini, and we're always there for you. So, John, thank you for coming and being here with us.
Thank you very much.
And for all those listeners out there, hey, you guys, thanks for joining in. And thanks for joining with the Old Guy Tech TV. And you know what? We need support. So if you can help us in any way, and if you know of some stories out there that you also want to bring forward and talk to us, we'll be here for you. So on behalf of Sheriff D'Agostini, Jonathan Charny, Rob Charny, I want to thank you. It was a great evening, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
They will support you. They will do referrals between clients. You can't ask for a more complete marketing package.
We love the windfall!
And you can too. Think advertising with the Windfall couldn't get any better? Well, it just did. For only $125 for a 30-second commercial filmed by Old Guy Tech TV, you can be seen and heard.